Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being with me today. This is a remarkably exciting day for us. I'm going to start by telling you that we did a protracted investigation over the last 2 years.
To understand the sheriff Judd is talking about, he's talking about a 2-year undercover investigation that led to the arrest of 85 people, including 6 ringleaders of a drug smuggling ring, according to the Florida Sheriff's Office. And the name of this undercover investigation is called Operation Flying Ice. And this Operation Flying Ice, it involves 3 different agencies: an agency in Florida, an agency in California, and one in Tennessee, which led to the seizure of over $12.8 million in drugs, including 268 pounds of methamphetamine and 31 pounds of cocaine. And this is according to an August the 19th news release from the Polk County Sheriff's Office. This investigation started in September of 2020 when officers seized 1 pound of methamphetamine in Winter Haven, which is about 50 miles southwest of Orlando, Florida. And from that day forward, I guess their law enforcement wisdom said, hey, we have to put a tail on these guys and see what's the meaning of all of this. Unless somebody spoke, I don't know. So from that point forward, detectives continued to make undercover narcotic purchases from drug dealers in the Winter Haven area, in which in doing that, they learned that large amounts of methamphetamine were being smuggled from California to Florida. And guess how they were smuggling it? In luggage bags, which were checked into flights through Florida Airport and the LAX, where the drug smugglers were buying airplane tickets, which are called ghost tickets, putting the luggage on the plane, but not getting on the plane themselves. So they were shipping it and catching it on the back end. Pretty genius for a time being, but all good things do come to an end because it didn't last. They ended up where the detectives began to wiretap their phones. And they started this in February of 2022. And they was intercepting all the communications between the group. And that's how they ended up getting busted. They said the detectives served 14 search warrants in Auburndale, Davenport, Polk City, Lake Wales, Winter Haven, and Riverview, Florida, as well as in Fresno, California. And as a result of all this investigation, they arrested 85 people and also issued warrants for 3 more. So in total it would be 88. And out of the 88, you had 6 ringleaders, which in the video I'm going to play, you'll hear the officer kind of break down the whole dynamics of the 6 ringleaders. And you'll see they had a pretty good thing going on for a moment. But in addition to all the other drugs they had seized, they also seized 180 pounds of bud, 3.4 pounds of MDMA, whatever the hell that is, 68 Xanax pills, 173 oxycodone pills, 49 firearms, 3 non-active grenades, 2 bulletproof vests, and 1 stolen motorcycle, and $235,000 in cash. So sit back and listen to this Sheriff Judd as he breaks down the story, and ask yourself, is the life of crime and drug sales, is it really worth it in 2022? I think not. We all know we live under the camera. We're all under the microscope. So it's always going to just be a matter of time.
It ended up with the oral intercept, or a wiretap, as we know. It's important to understand that when you do a wiretap investigation, that immediately that investigation is going to leave your jurisdiction. It always does, because we're dealing with an international smuggling ring that operated out of Winter Haven, Florida. There was a lot of predicate cases that was put together before the wiretap was ever requested. And it takes an entire team of people across the United States. We could not have been successful. We had to have contacts, and we had to have work that occurred from the importation of methamphetamine by the pound, by the multiple pound, from Mexico into Los Angeles and Fresno. And from LAX to Fresno, all of this drug flowed through, some through Memphis and some directly to us through the Orlando airport. So we began in September of 2020. We received information that the Jefferson family from Winter Haven was smuggling large amounts of drugs into Florida, from Mexico through California, and then to the streets of Central Florida. In February of 22, we ultimately initiated the wiretap. And why did we do this? We bought and made predicate cases for the wiretap throughout the 2 ensuing years, but we couldn't get to the top and link the organization together. This was a very different kind of operation. If you look at our org chart there, you notice that there's kind of 3 distinct groups of people. They were all interacting, but they had heads of each organization, and we'll go over and introduce you to some of them in a few minutes. But it wasn't the traditional organization. It was multifaceted. So we started the investigation, and here's what we determined. We determined that this large amount of drugs, by and large, was being smuggled to us from LAX in domestic flights. And I want to focus on domestic flights for just a few minutes. As a result of this investigation, we arrested 85 suspects. We added 355 new felony charges, 93 new misdemeanor charges to them. In this particular operation, we seized 268 pounds of methamphetamine, 6.8 ounces of fentanyl. Now, that doesn't sound like a lot, just 6.8 ounces. But according to our DEA partners, 2 milligrams of fentanyl can be a deadly overdose. Okay, Grady, so what does all that mean? It means that 6.8 ounces of fentanyl could have killed up to 96,000 people. We seized a total of 49 firearms, all kinds of other assorted drugs and pills worth $12.8 million, and we seized $235,000 in cash. We know firsthand there were at least 2 drug overdoses during this investigation. And one of the drug overdoses, as I said, was one of the Kingpin's brothers that occurred just before we kicked the entire investigation off. It's important to understand why we were up on the wiretap, that we heard chatter within minutes of an unsolved homicide that's still being worked diligently by the Winter Haven Police Department at this time. So when you know that you have at least 2 overdose deaths, when you know that there is chatter on your wiretap as to a murder that just occurred in the city of Winter Haven, you're dealing with violent, dangerous people. So let's look at some of the individual players. Here's Abdosh McKenzie. We'll go over real quick. He was selling fentanyl pills. He would tell us that in the undercover operations, I operate in mysterious ways so the cops can't catch me. Newsflash, it wasn't so mysterious. He got his first job in 9 years recently at KFC, Kentucky Fried Chicken. Do you know why? He was proud of that $200 he made that week. Now he's a major drug smuggler. Why did he do that? Well, he was jammed up in a custody dispute, and he had to show the judge that he had a legitimate job. Otherwise, where did the money come from? But he is a businessman, because then he would pay his co-workers with dope to prep his workstation at work. But he's an ethical KFC guy, because my guys asked him, can we have the recipe for the Kentucky Fried Chicken? He wouldn't give it up if he had it. But this guy was scamming the system the whole way. Then there's DeMarcus Jefferson. He's another local kingpin of the operation. His brother is the one at only 25 years of age died of a drug overdose. Ladies and gentlemen, let me underscore once again, I can't understand how in the world DeMarcus could peddle poison to people when his family suffered such a loss as their 25-year-old kid brother. But there are people dying every day across this country because of drug overdoses and drug abuse. And yet we continue to try to downplay it as nonviolent, low-level drugs. You'll hear me say that a lot. The next person that tells you that, ask them if they're out of their mind or if they're on drugs, because it's dangerous. Now, along the way, just before the investigation, here's DeMarcus Jefferson's vehicle as he was intoxicated and drove through the front of a store. Some of the local news stations covered this. But what did he have with him when he drove into the front of this store while impaired? He had drugs, because he made phone calls, and we have videos from the store of people running up with masks on, going into the trunk, and taking items out of the trunk before law enforcement arrived. DeMarcus is also involved in violent crashes. Then there's Antonio Jefferson, another one of the family members. In April 2021, we and the Florida Department of Law Enforcement charged him with armed trafficking in methamphetamine. While, let me say this clearly, I don't want you to miss it. While out on bond, he was trafficking more methamphetamine. Did you hear what I told you? Let me say that again, so you want to hear it clearly. I don't want to stutter. In April, we arrested him with FDLE on armed trafficking of meth. He bonded out and was trafficking in meth. And then we heard him on the Intercept saying, my attorney wants me to help. He wants me to cooperate. He wants me to give substantial assistance. He bragged, how can I do that? I'm the head of my organization. How can I help? Well, we're going to help Antonio Jefferson. We're going to help him to the state prison for a very long time. I hope his attorney got paid in advance. Then there's Nathaniel Carr. He was federally indicted for robbery, from home invasions robberies, where he portrayed himself as a law enforcement officer, where he was kicking in doors throughout Central Florida. He's in custody. But we also have him for conspiracy to traffic in methamphetamine that occurred before he was arrested for his robbery arrest. He resided in Lakeland. He currently resides in federal lockup. Then there's Vicente Basanta. He's here from Venezuela with political asylum. Did you hear that? He is here with political asylum. Apparently, his ex-wife, who's not with him anymore and is not here, was a news reporter for the opposing party in Venezuela. So when the new party came in, she was scared, and guess what? He fled to the United States. Does he appreciate the United States? Oh no, he doesn't appreciate the United States. He comes here to traffic in drugs. And what you have here is a Bible case. You see? People recognize these as Bible cases. But what did Vicente do? He carried his drugs in these Bible cases. Now, how much more low down can you get? So we give political asylum to a guy from Venezuela to come to this country to traffic in drugs and hide it in Bible cases. What the heck? I'm certain there must be some other words for him beside what I've said, but they probably wouldn't be appropriate. Oh, he was trafficking in cocaine. He's still here legally on asylum. I say we send him back. This is Clay Bryan. Now, this is interesting. To tell you how this international operation goes, Clay pulls up at the racetrack gas station in Eagle Lake, and he leaves the car running. Did you hear what I said? He left the car running while he ran into the store. Was only going to be gone a short time. Voila. 3 juveniles from the area steal his car. And all of a sudden, they're wrapped up in an international drug smuggling operation when they steal the guard of the stash house's vehicle, which had a pound of meth in it. But being the enterprising young men that they were, not knowing they were in with some really bad dudes, they found the meth. But did they decide, let's abandon our stolen car and our meth? No. Then they talked about, hey, I'm going to sell this meth and make some real money. That's right. So these little dudes not only ripped off a major international drug smuggling operation, then they were going to sell the dope to make a profit. Well, they all got arrested. But it's funny how there's twists and turns, because they did us a favor by stealing that car that day. All of that led us back to Clay Bryan, and we seized an additional 24 pounds of meth. And it all started because they stole the car that Clay was operating. Thank you, you little criminals. Raspers. Then there's Dormonte Munson. He's known as D-Money. He's a local rapper. He was a mastermind. He was one that really put together the trips from the LAX to Florida. But here's the neat thing about Dormonte. he would go through the community. He would provide fireworks on the holidays. He would have Christmas gift giveaways. He would provide Easter egg hunts. You see, he was the good guy in the community, made the money, shared it with the kids. You know, he was grooming himself as a community charitable contributor for the underprivileged. The whole time he's doing it with smuggled and trafficked drug money. He had an associate, Samuel Javaris. Samuel Javaris got a legitimate Georgia driver's license with a false name on it, and he booked the flights. He utilized the false names. It worked. He had a robbery warrant and a VOP for battery on a law enforcement that was 10 years old. We couldn't find him. He had taken on a new identity successfully. And he had a friend with him, Aldrea McPherson. You see, he's big time. He had a home in Fresno and a home in Davenport, and he moved the drugs. And when we went to stop them so that we could serve the search warrant, Aldrea called children who she had access to and told them, hide the dope. Little kids, hide the dope. Are you kidding me? So what did they do with their money? They bought gold, lots of gold. This won't even fit over my head like the last one, so I'll just hold it up. $36,000 worth of gold. And sometimes they would have what they call ghost tickets. They would get a ticket to travel, check their bag, and never get on the airplane. And the suitcase would fly by itself. Other times, in this particular case where we took the 6 suitcases off, there were people on the planes with the drugs, 6 of them. But they're very talented and they're very experienced. So this is not the first time these drugs have leaked through, which causes you to be suspicious of when they schedule the flights and who was on duty down checking the baggage in, because they would come off of the planes, through the security, down the elevators, and spread out. We watched a very, very, very impressive effort for them to be able to pick their drugs up and avoid detection. We did surveillance, and people would come from Orlando, and they would go to Lakeland and then down to Bartow and then back to Winter Haven before they'd end up back in Davenport. They would make a round-robin trip. So they were very calculated. But look, they weren't hiding this among clothes. They were sending it in this form. So at the end of the day, there was a hook someplace. There had to be. LAX needs to get on this. I can tell you, was it nine telephones we listened to? 11 telephones we listened to over this operation. And understand, when you roll from phone to phone to phone, they drop phones and go to other phones, and then we have to go update the paperwork and get the state attorney's approval, and then ultimately the judge that's overseeing the case is approval before we can intercept the communications. But there was 11 different telephones in this operation.
How critical were these wiretaps to getting these criminals off the street?
The law clearly says that if there's any other method to successfully dismantle the organization, you can't use communications interceptions or a wiretap. So you have to exhaust other investigative methods before you go to a wiretap. So this organization could not have been dismantled absent this operation with this wiretap. And keep in mind, this investigation is still ongoing. You know, people watching this, and I hope you're tuned in on your favorite social media. We're after you too. Don't sleep well tonight. Don't think you're going to just drink good wine and snort coke. You know, we're after you. It's just, it's difficult in a state like California where they make misdemeanors out of possession of heroin and methamphetamine and cocaine. I'm trying to encourage everybody who wants to deal with or use drugs, all move to California. You know, if you just go out there, you know, we wouldn't put you in state prison anymore here until you start sending your drugs back here. Because California still hadn't got the message, but slowly but surely they are, as their crime rate goes up, their homelessness is out of control, the tax base is crazy, the good people are losing their mind in California. There's just not enough good people out there to lose their mind to make a difference. So at the end of the day, if you want to use drugs, go to California and stay there. Use it out there. It's a misdemeanor, and we won't bother you here in Florida, but we want to lock your butt up here.